Welcome to Kingdom Vibes TV, where powerful stories remind you that God sees, God hears, and God still shows up, especially when you feel like giving up. Today's story isn't set in a church or during a spiritual revival. It's set in an old, nearly forgotten library. No dramatic miracles. No lightning from heaven. Just one handwritten letter. Left behind by a stranger. Found by a broken soul. Used by God. This is the letter in the library. And if you're barely hanging on, this story was written for you. Daniel wasn't the kind of man people worried about. He was the strong one in his friend group, quick to encourage, always the helper. If you asked people about him, they'd say, "Daniel's got it together." But behind the smile was a storm no one saw coming. In the span of a few months, his life had unraveled. He lost his job of 5 years without warning. Laid off. Downsized. Forgotten. The girl he planned to marry ended the relationship. Tears, silence, closure never came. And slowly, his world shrank. Friends stopped calling. Days blurred into nights. Mornings brought anxiety, not hope. He'd stay in bed until late afternoon, staring at the ceiling, thinking, is this all my life is going to be now? His faith had grown quiet too. He still believed in God. But he wondered if God still believed in him. That morning, Daniel didn't plan to go anywhere. But something inside whispered, just go outside. Not a voice. Not a command. Just a nudge. So he got dressed, laced up his worn sneakers, and stepped out into the cold morning air. No phone. No destination. Just footsteps, and exhaustion. As he walked, Daniel passed a familiar street he hadn't visited in years. At the far end was a building he barely remembered. A public library. Not the kind filled with people and programs. No digital kiosks. No children's story time. This place looked like time had forgotten it. A quiet building with faded signage and ivy crawling across brick walls. He pulled open the glass door. It creaked. Inside, the air was thick with dust, old pages, and silence. The kind of silence that settles on your shoulders like a heavy blanket. But not in a bad way. It was still. Safe. There were only 3 other people inside. One elderly man reading the paper. A student asleep over her textbook. And the librarian, quietly sorting cards behind the desk. Daniel didn't come to read. He just came to sit. To escape the weight of his apartment, and the noise in his own head. He chose a wooden chair in the back corner. And for the first time that day, he breathed deeply. After almost an hour of sitting in silence, Daniel stood and wandered between shelves. He wasn't looking for anything. He just needed to move. To feel the texture of something other than despair. He traced his fingers along the spines of books. Most of them dusty, faded, unread for years. One book caught his attention. Not because it was eye-catching, but because it wasn't. A plain brown hardback. No glossy cover. No bold title. Just a faded gold imprint. Daily light, scriptures for reflection, He pulled it off the shelf. It was heavier than expected. When he opened it, the spine cracked slightly, and a folded paper slipped out onto the floor. Daniel froze. He bent down and picked it up. It was thin, a bit crumpled, clearly old, but not printed, handwritten. He looked around. No one else was watching. No one else seemed to care. With hesitant hands, he unfolded it. The handwriting was imperfect. A little messy. Slanted to the left. Some lines were darker than others, like the pen had run out mid-sentence. But what stunned Daniel wasn't the paper. It was what the letter said. To the person who finds this, you're not here by mistake. I don't know what brought you here. Maybe you're tired. Maybe you're hurting. Maybe you're questioning everything. I've been there too. But here's what I want you to know. God sees you. He hasn't forgotten you. He hears your cries, even the silent ones. You are not invisible. You are not hopeless. And you are not done. This isn't the end of your story. You're still needed. You're still loved. Hang on. From someone who made it through. Daniel blinked. Once. Twice. He read it again, slower this time. Each sentence felt like oxygen to a suffocating soul. Tears pooled in his eyes. He whispered aloud, God, was this for me? And though the room was silent, something inside whispered, yes. Daniel didn't hear angels. He didn't fall to his knees. But he sat there, gripping that letter. And for the first time in months, he felt seen. That moment didn't erase his pain. It didn't solve his money problems. But it gave him a reason to breathe again. It reminded him he wasn't alone. He wasn't forgotten. And maybe, just maybe, God hadn't gone silent. Daniel took the letter home, taped it to his wall, and every morning after that, he read it again. The next day, Daniel reached out to a counselor. He confessed to a friend. I haven't been okay. He started walking every morning, reading one psalm a day, slowly rebuilding trust with people and with God. He didn't become super spiritual overnight, but he stopped pretending. Some days were still heavy, but they no longer felt hopeless. And all of it began with a letter in a forgotten book. Years passed. Daniel now worked at a youth mentorship center, helping teens battle depression, anxiety, identity confusion, and deep spiritual questions. He was mentoring a 17-year-old who reminded him of himself. Quiet, withdrawn, hurting beneath the surface. One chilly afternoon, they walked past that same library. Daniel smiled. They went in, walked the same aisle, found the same book. It was still there. And this time, Daniel tucked a new letter into its pages. Handwritten. Simple. Sincere. It began. To the person who finds this, you are not here by accident. Sometimes, God doesn't shout. He doesn't send a thunderclap. He doesn't split the skies. Sometimes, he leaves a letter. Sometimes, he meets you in silence. Sometimes, he writes hope between pages no one else reads. You are not forgotten. You are not invisible. And your story isn't finished. Maybe today's story is your letter. And maybe it's God's gentle reminder that He's closer than you think. Have you ever stumbled upon grace in an unexpected place? Drop a comment and say, God, I know you still see me. Share this with someone who needs hope today. Like if this story reminded you of God's quiet faithfulness. Subscribe to Kingdom Vibes TV for more real stories that carry the light of God into everyday places. The library was quiet, but heaven was speaking.